Hello and welcome back to Shelve Your Boots. I'm Katie, the face behind Shelve Your Boots, and this week we've got two guests again. We're really going all out this end of year with double guests last week, double guests this week. But this week we've got Ali and Rich from What Makes the Difference. So hello to you both. If you could give a little intro about yourselves, and your backgrounds, because one of you does have a military background, one of you doesn't have a military background, and how you got to where you are today, what makes the difference. So if Ali, if you want to go first.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm the one without the military background, and I have an HR background instead, so I'm sorry. But I also have a background in terms of coaching for trauma recovery, for PTSD, CPTSD, and for neurodifference. And a talent for understanding the military brain. So What Makes the Difference came about as a result of a podcast challenge that Rich dragged me into. Because we were both at that point working with a military charity. And I'll pass you over to Rich and let Rich fill in the blanks on that one.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us on, Katie. We appreciate it. Yeah, so I left the army for the second time back in September, October 2013.
Yeah.
And we had a very good transition. Various bits and pieces were going on as well. And ended up doing an NLP course. And then I ended up as well volunteering with a military mental health charity, and that's where I met Ali. And then we set up the podcast initially called Rethinking Trauma and Transition. And then we renamed it after the CIC because that makes sense, called What Makes a Difference.
Yeah.
And that's to help with that service transition for the service leaver, the veteran, reservists and spouses as well, and children. So it's the whole family integration part, really.
Yeah. Which I think is actually quite rare. I think you're the only guys I've seen so far, and especially this sort of second half of this year, I've ended up seeing a lot through the algorithms that have been thrown my way now. And I think you're the only guys I've seen that have actually included spouses and children in that sort of transition out, because it is a whole family affair. And it's something I'd like to discuss next year, especially because I think for a lot of families it is very difficult to see an individual that you met more than likely while they were serving be very, very confident, know exactly what they're about and what they're doing, to then come out and potentially lose a lot of confidence, start to have a lot of stress, start to have a lot of worry, and to try and sort of be part of that and help that for spouses is very, very difficult to also process for them.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say?
Yeah, you become your own support network, don't you? And
Yeah.
that's what we aim. That's what we're kind of aiming for people to be: is build their own internal community within their family, as well as then is looking outside their family, not necessarily workplace, but local groups, organisations, where they can also get that support. So you're building your own communities outside as well.
Yeah.
I think we forget, or we oversimplify the experience of leaving the military.
Yeah.
Massively oversimplify it. In that the focus is all on job and location and home. But what you're forgetting is that the nature of that job and that lifestyle is it's an all-inclusive wraparound community that wraps around the serving individual, their partner, and their children.
Yeah.
And that means that not only the serving individual leaves that community and that job, so does their partner and so does their children.
Yeah.
And that means that all of them are now faced in a situation where they are now in a different community, different rules, different language structures, different behaviour patterns, different trusts or lacks of trusts, because you don't know what's around you. And the volume of processing and thinking that requires compared to where they've been before shoots through the roof.
Yeah.
They've also got the issue that the working patterns are such that there's also another transition, which is the transition of the service member back into the family on a different set of terms
Yeah.
and expectations. And all of that is incredibly stressful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, especially with a lot of relationships, you get into a space where you get used to them not being around, and then all of a sudden they're around all the time. And then they're irritable and they don't know what to do with themselves and all the rest of it that goes with it. And all of a sudden it becomes a very strained and stressful scenario to be in as a
Mm-hmm.
whole family unit.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It even comes down to, you go onto married patches, they're married patches, even the street signs are different. That the whole, they're at times as well can be patrolled by, MPGS as well. So even what they're seeing out their windows is completely different. They're looked after by the likes of Carillion and all the rest of it. So they see more of them than they do potentially like parish councils and things like that. So they're literally from home to work and lifestyle, everything, friends, neighbours, language is being uprooted, and
Mm-hmm.
you're being placed back into society again.
Yeah.
There is a definite, you drive through, and it's probably something only military people really notice when you drive through certain towns. You're like, well, that's a married patch. That's a married patch. That's a married patch. You instantly know the format of a married patch.
Yeah.
So when it came to what makes the difference, how did you guys sort of start, and where did you start sort of looking initially? How did it grow to sort of what it is today?
So what we were looking at is building courses similar
Yeah,
to what Walking with the Wounded does, with
yeah,
having a kind of 12-week course. But we would have, so you'd have the serving soldier, reservist, veteran, whoever it was, serving personnel as well as a veteran, and you'd also have the spice running alongside at different times for a week, and then
yeah,
we'd do that for 6 weeks, and then we were looking at having a weekend retreat where you bring the kids along as well, so they get that whole integration bit. Another 6 weeks, another weekend, and then a follow-up, say like 3 months down the road, to see how people are progressing. And
yeah,
that was our initial model, but we've had to make quite a bit of adjustments on that for the time being.
yeah,
I think the challenge is, if you look at service provision, we mentioned briefly that this is very different from just a job,
mm,
yet the support networks are for the job search. What we're doing is something that a lot of people don't actually realise they need until they have it, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, why didn't I have this earlier and sooner, because this would have solved so many problems.
yeah,
Because when we were working with the military charity, we recognised that we could either treat the symptom, which was the anxiety, the depression, the resurgence of PTSI symptoms, etc., or we could go deeper and treat the root cause. And the root cause, when we dug a little deeper, was, I don't know how to navigate this world I'm in now. I don't know how to have these conversations. I don't know how to build these trusts. I don't know how to... I don't even recognise that I need boundaries,
yeah,
because it's not been something that I've needed before. I don't recognise that I'm overextending. I don't know how to establish the new patterns that I need in my life to be able to operate safely. And we started working with that. And we started giving people those skills, helping them figure that stuff out so they could have a personalised system for themselves. And the anxiety started to resolve itself. The depression lifted. Social integration improved. Family relationships improved, because now they were having the conversations they needed to have before it was crisis point and people were slamming the doors and storming out the room. Because the capacity to have that conversation hadn't existed before. So we built capacity. That means that that's still where we're aiming now, is building the individual's capacity and that level of self-knowledge, because if you understand yourself and how you need to operate, and you understand how to communicate that, the level of self-advocacy goes up, your choices get better, and as a result you build your community around about you. Your sense of safety improves, you start to create that sense of belonging, and you redefine who you are as an individual. That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
All of which are missing when you leave that military community. You leave the uniform behind, you leave the structure, you leave the rules, you leave the point of connection, and you've never had to create that before. We help you learn how to create that.
Yeah, and for me, it's a frustration point for me where at that point of transition, and you've clicked to your freedom and all the rest of it. It's frustrating that there's not even an acknowledgement at that point that this is going to be a big change. I mean, it's usually pumped into you that, oh, you do know you'll have to pay for your gym now, or you'll have to pay for your dental and your prescription, and it's used as a way of, are you sure you want to do this? That then incites sort of the fear factor of everything, because it is used to try and keep people in, create this fear of the outside. But then there needs to be an acknowledgement of, this is going to feel very, very overwhelming. You've got a lot of decisions that are coming your way. Doesn't mean to say you're not going to be able to deal with them, but we need to acknowledge the fact that that's going to happen, and it's just never spoken of. And like you say, it's just CVs, LinkedIn, off you go. But you're leaving an entire institution that has looked after you for X amount of years, and pretty much built your day-to-day life and how it looks, and where you're going to move to, and what unit you're going to be in. And they always give you the dream list, don't they, Rich? What 3 postings do you want next?
Yeah,
and
I was pretty
you
fortunate with that.
Were
I was
you
actually
fortunate?
quite
Were you one of the
fortunate.
lucky?
Yeah.
The gods chosen. Because a friend of mine, a relative of mine, they've had theirs, and they've got, he's got a post and he didn't want it. I was like, why the hell did you put that last? You should have put it first, because you never would have got it if you put it
True.
first. Should have put it last. But it is a frustration that it's such a small thing but has a huge impact, is that acknowledgement that this is going to be a big change, and you're letting go of a lot of control around you, which is a good thing, but it's going to be scary for a lot of people, especially if they've been in since 16 and they went to Harrogate and all the rest of it. It's been a huge safety net and family, like you say. It's everything that's looked after while you're in.
Well, they may have also gone through the cadets as well. So you may have had somebody who's from 13 years old. All right, yeah, it's not military, but still that slight integration into service life. You do that Harrogate, as you say, and then you're spending all your time as a regular. But what they are forgetting is everybody has to leave at some point.
Yeah.
And they're not acknowledging that. I think there's a retention thing as well, as they're not acknowledging that people got to leave because they're scared of people leaving. Everybody has to leave, but you also have to help people leave better as well. So they're not ending up homeless, they're not ending up in the justice system, they're not ending up low unemployment or underemployment or unemployed after they get out.
Yeah.
And they have that successful integration back into a community.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this really backward thinking that, well, if we invest in you too much, you'll just leave. You'll just leave. And my argument has been for a while, they're leaving anyway.
Yeah.
And in my mind, if you actually invest in people, the likelihood is they might actually stay longer because they want the free courses. They want to better themselves. And for some people, it could almost be a form of university for them, where they're earning, working, seeing the world for free. Okay, not the great bits of the world, but they're seeing something. And they're getting an education at the same time. For some people, that can really save them, and they might stay longer than they would do without all of that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think what's forgotten there is people don't leave because they're valued, because they're supported, and because their skills are enhanced. People leave because they're undervalued. People leave because they're betrayed, people believe because they're unseen, people believe because they're taken for granted.
Yeah.
People don't leave when they're invested in and supported. People stay.
Yeah, and I think that's where they have got it at the moment really wrong, and people are leaving in their droves, and there is this panic going on, and they're trying desperately to keep people, but they're not going in the right direction with that. So more people are just leaving. I mean, I think there was a comment made a while ago that we could literally fit our army into Wembley now, and there'd
Yeah.
still be empty seats.
I also,
Which, I mean,
I think there's
quite a bank can.
to get political creative. I think a lot of people lost faith in the government, where you got the witch hunts as well
Yeah.
for Northern Ireland and the Afghan and Iraq and everything else that's been going on. If you can't trust the government to send you out somewhere, and when you come back off tour and 50 years later you're getting persecuted.
Yeah, there's always the sword of Pericles hanging over your head, I
Mhm.
think, as well. And
Yeah.
I think as well there's sort of an anxiety that I've found as well with people I've spoken to, is the current situations that we're in at the moment. There's, we're constantly sort of tiptoeing around a next war, and we can now still be recalled till we're 55. So
Mhm.
even when you leave, there is an anxiety and constant nag at the back of your brain every time you switch the news on. I might have to go back at some point, because I know for a fact we're in demand. So if it really comes push to shove, there could be another recall situation, which then causes, a constant kind of rumbling of anxiety until I'm 55. And it's something that a lot of my friends who have left also have. They're constant. There's almost like this pull back to the military still. You've always got one eye on it, so you don't necessarily completely leave either. Which is a very strange, from when I left, and it was, you're going through your clicks and all the rest of it, and it's like, oh, that won't happen unless World War III happens, and then COVID, and then Russia, Ukraine, and everything else started to rumble out, and you just think, oh, this could happen. So it's a constant, I think, worry as well for people that have left, that it's almost like, don't get too comfortable. That's a
Mhm.
sort of feeling I have. Don't get too comfortable, because you might have to go back and live on a camp cot at some point. Which, yeah, it makes it even harder, I think, sometimes to fully leave, because you don't necessarily always feel like you can. But in terms of with what makes the difference, and sort of the conversations that you're having with individuals that have left the services, what are you finding are like the common worries? Because I've certainly had conversations with people that I'm sort of sat there going, you're not the only one I've spoken to this about. What are the commonalities you're seeing through these workshops and courses and things?
I think for me, because we've got limited scope, but we do one-to-one support as well. And a lot of the conversations around the sense of displacement,
Yeah.
the sense of not fitting in, and also actually a lot of the issues are post-service. A lot of the hurts and the injuries, and by that I'm talking about almost kind of like
Breaches of
the
trust.
transference of an experience into a trauma, which now becomes something that has to be dealt with separately. Actually, it doesn't necessarily start off that way. It becomes that after service, because of the experiences after service,
Yeah.
because of interacting with people who don't understand service, who try and treat that like it's a mainstream issue, try and treat you like you're a mainstream individual, when your experiences are vastly different, the context is vastly different, and they don't understand the decision-making processes your brain has been trained to do.
Yeah.
They make assumptions that don't fit, because they've never stopped to actually sit down and understand what the context of your experiences are.
Yeah.
and then you end up in a treatment cycle which doesn't actually address what's actually happening for you, and you end up in that almost looping sense of frustration at not being able to get the support. Yet you see it on the news and the media about, the Armed Forces Covenant and how, you're meant to get all of this priority support and this is all out there for you, and yet it doesn't seem to translate to lived experience.
Yeah, and this is something I spoke about on the last podcast with, and it's something that these two doctors are trying desperately to change is having that training and those conversations, but also medical links in systems. Something that should be there by now. We're in 2025. We have AI, for crying out loud, but we can't have a military medical system speak to the NHS and vice versa. So even my medical history is fragmented, and you have individuals leaving that have very complex issues, have very complex mental health issues, and they're going into a GP's as if it's the first time they've ever seen a doctor, and they're having to relive all of this, and potentially, we'll put you on this medication. No, I've tried that, but because it's not on the notes, you've got to go through the same process again, and you're having to go through that sort of pipeline of trying to find the right fit all over again. And it's down to something as simple as communication systems that fails.
And I think one of the things is, as I was kind of hinting at, is that moral injury.
Yeah.
So we work with people because everything is pretty much a crisis point. And what we want to be is that proactive point where we're working with the service leaving the families before they leave.
Yeah.
And so because it's a crisis, then people are already in shit street. It's the last point they want to turn to. And they may have already gone around half a dozen different organisations or more, and they've been told that they're too complex. So they've not only had a moral injury from potentially service life, but they might also be having is what they might call another form of moral injury, is a sanctuary trauma.
Yeah.
Where you're told you're too complex, go and see somebody else. Oh yeah, you're too complex, go and see somebody else. You're too complex, go and see somebody else. And so that kind of adds up to that frustration, and then those people present to another organisation pissed off, frustrated, but it's not at that individual, it's at the system, how it's broken and it's not working for them.
Yeah, and I think it does get to a point, service leavers, that you feel like you're English speaking in a Mandarin speaking country, and you're trying desperately to ask for help, and just no one's understanding in a word of English at this point. And you're crying out desperately for someone to just understand you. And I think that's where this whole podcast was born from, was having those reactions with individuals that were leaving and were struggling, and that they were friends of mine, where I'd say certain things and the eyes are just, you know this, you get this, oh my God, this is a thing. It's that kind of connection that, they're absolutely grappling for, from someone to just understand, what, this is normal, what, this is what you need to do. You're not on your own in this. And unfortunately, I just don't think there's enough out there of people talking about it. And we're in our little pockets that we're in, trying desperately to reach those individuals, which is frustrating. But hopefully, with the likes of the internet and social media, get across to people as much as possible. But in terms of sort of approaching you guys, then you say you want to sort of reach people before they leave. When is sort of the best time for people to sort of reach out and ask for either services or help, or just any kind of signposting from you guys? Where do you want to capture people at? Just after the 9 clicks, or a few months in?
I think that's ideally that'd be beforehand.
Yeah.
Are those 9 clicks the right decision for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you in, if you've just had a really bad day and you're like pissed off with it and that's it, I'm going to sign off. Or you're making a proper
Yeah.
calculated decision where you're going, right, I've got the skills and talent and knowledge. I know I can go and earn, I don't know, from earning say 30 grand in forces to maybe 70 on Civvy Street. So is that
Yeah.
how calculated is this decision you're making?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And how realistic is it for where you want to actually live as well? The 70k
I
job
think,
is London.
Yeah,
well, I think there's an awful lot of assumptions out there which push people into situations they don't need to be in.
Yeah.
One of those is that when you leave the military, you have to start from the bottom and work your way up.
Yeah.
Bollocks.
Yeah.
Well, you just need to know how to translate what you've done and what you've got in terms of experience-wise into a conversation you can have with a recruiter.
Yeah.
But there's work to be done with the companies as well, because the assumption is that if you're sitting at a job interview, that the person interviewing you knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Trust me, no,
Nope.
most definitely not.
Yeah.
No, some of them will be amazing, others, no.
Yeah.
I'll have nightmares about them for the rest of my life. But the other thing is, and again, it's the level of assumptions. And there needs to be stuff done to challenge those assumptions. One of those is about trauma,
Yeah.
is the fact that if you're experiencing a negative outcome, if you're struggling, then it must be about trauma. And it always goes straight to that, and then it goes straight to almost a dissection of an event. But the trauma isn't the event, the trauma is the stuff that changes how you live your life after. And in order to resolve that, you have to learn different patterns and identify what you and your system and your brain needs to give you that sense of safety and security.
Yeah.
But that can start, and we can build those skills literally from childhood onwards. It's just, it's never built in. It's hit or miss whether we get those or not. You add in, for instance, in the military, because Katie and you and I were very briefly talking on that earlier on today, it's the perfect example and environment for a neurodifferent brain.
Yeah.
Because it reduces complexity, non-value added complexity. I'm gonna add that, non-value add complexity. It standardizes and systemizes. It sets the rules for interactions, for behaviors, for conversations. It has a defined approach in terms of building relationships, and it even has a defined set of rules for humor. If you struggle with ambiguity and context, which is a common theme within an awful lot of neurodifferences, that is heaven. It's absolute heaven, because the context is always clear, the level of ambiguity is incredibly low, and the level of non-value added tasks that you have to expend your working energy on is reduced as low as possible.
Yeah.
So you don't learn to accommodate your different thinking processes, because you don't need to, because you're in the perfect environment for it, and you might not even notice
Yeah.
that you're different from someone else. And then you leave and the world comes crashing down round about you.
Yeah.
And it comes crashing down round about you because of the sheer volume of stuff that you now have to find a way to cope with, adjust to, deal with, systemise, and you've never been taught how to do that. You've not needed to learn that. And the interesting thing is, much as though I'm highlighting this about neurodifference, it actually doesn't matter. This impacts everyone. It's just that it may well impact neurodifference more, because that's when you suddenly notice that you actually may have, or you suddenly become curious about the fact that actually, hang on, people are saying this sounds like ADHD, this sounds like autism, this sounds like... But again, a lot of that is about the patterns and the environment you build round about you.
Yeah.
But we're not taught to pay attention to that. Rich and I were doing a workshop just recently, and we were talking about the structure and how we can build the life that works for us. And one of the participants gave us a lovely quote, because he said to us, "This is really weird. I feel like you're pointing out all the stuff I've always known but never paid attention to." And I'm like, that right there is on the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're teaching you to pay attention.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that really this year, and I mean, I've been out 5 years now, and it's only something that I've been seeing and having conversation about it this year, and all of a sudden everything makes total sense. Is sort of the volume of people that are leaving that are undiagnosed with autism and ADHD that then have spirals, and I've had personal friends that have been undiagnosed, spiraled badly, and then have been diagnosed as a result of spiraling into a form of depression and severe anxiety. Um, and I spoke to her on the phone a while ago, and she was like, honestly, mate, the amount of people, because I'm ex Incore, and she's like, the amount of people I've met who are Incore who have come out and been diagnosed with either autism, ADHD, or both is 100%. 100%. And she's like, the only reason we got in that core is because we had some form of autism or ADHD. But that's where, it thrives, absolutely thrives. And then you look back at your career and suddenly see the room in a different view and go, oh my God, yeah, we all had some form of something, but we were in a space where we just thrived. It just absolutely thrived. But then certain individuals have come out and not acknowledged and not realised, and then really spiraled because that whole environment was gone. And it's not just the Incore. I've gone on other events as well, and all the women there have been diagnosed with ADHD at 40, all ex-service, nurses, RMP, all of them. And even they're like, this is so refreshing. A submariner, he got very suicidal, then got diagnosed with ADHD, and then the light came back on, and he's like, this makes so much more sense. But without having that diagnosis or acknowledging it, I feel at times you start fighting with yourself constantly, because the structure of what allowed you to just breathe was gone completely. Are you finding that you are seeing that more often now than sort of not really? It's a case of there are a lot more neurodivergent sort of, you know,
I
probably like
think
the soul of the issue of trouble leaving rather than anything else.
I think partly that you may not, or people may not go into the forces with ADHD or autism, but it could be the structure of one, you're a young person going in, your brain's not fully formed until you're 25, 26, 27, and how that basic training then can also formulate how your brain is molded, so it becomes
Yeah.
very used to that structure and that routine of service life. So it's also potentially then a combination of that, as well as it being highlighted on social media more. There's more people talking about it, so people go, "Oh, I recognise this trait within me," or "Oh, I've got these characteristics."
Yeah.
And so as people become more aware, they may not necessarily have a full-blown ADHD or whatever it is. It just may be that they've recognised these aspects of themselves more, and it's become more less stigma around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's also a lack of an increasing lack of diversity in our environments. So, an example of that could be the farming community, where traditionally you go back a couple of generations and the farming life has always been challenging, always been difficult, and always been intense. But a couple of generations ago, it was also actually very structured. The rules of it were really quite simple, but hard graft. However, as our community and our environment and our cultures develop, the level of complexity has increased tenfold, and the level of diversity of environment has decreased. All jobs now have a level of IT, of complexity, of reporting, of systemization, of oversight, etc., that wasn't always present in every single environment. The level of ambiguity in general has increased, and the number of areas where that ambiguity is low has decreased. we will naturally gravitate to where we are most comfortable. If the level of diversity in our communities is reducing, there are less options for us to pick to find the place we are most comfortable.
Yeah.
And as a result, when we are uncomfortable, then that becomes problematic. It's not the neuro difference that's the issue, it's the lack of diversity in our communities
Yeah.
to allow each individual to find the natural best placement for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's something that does need to be spoken about a hell of a lot more than what is happening at the moment. Um, and that whole kind of structure and just the battle rhythm of everything, and the, like you say, it's the rules. You have the rules everywhere. And I think what's interesting is where I've found certain people did fall out of love with the military, who were hardcore military lovers, was COVID. It was the COVID period, because there was a sudden realization there was no real policy for this. They were thinking on their feet quite a lot through it. And so there was a lot of instability of what are the boundaries? What can I do? What can't I do? What's right? What's wrong? They're doing this, but they're doing this, and we're doing that, and we're not allowed to do this, but you want us to do that, but what policy? And all of a sudden there was this uncertainty I found with people who were still serving, that were hardcore, I'm going to be in for life, did not like that situation at all, and got very, very angry with the situation. But it presented a situation for the military where, that there weren't the policies and the guidelines and the rules and the tram lines that they're used to. Even, as a colonel and as a general, yes, you're making decisions, but it's all within policies, it's all within the guidelines, and it's all within the notebook that they give you. So it's really interesting, sort of seeing how it can also unravel within when they're still serving, and that change, and that, like you say, the diversity, suddenly they're in free fall, and it's, what do we do now? And you could see people starting to really, really struggle that were still serving at that point.
Again, I would say that stems back to them breaches of trust. Accountability is,
Yeah.
you should have taken this into consideration. You could have had a smallpox outbreak, and that could translate across to the COVID going on, but that should still be a policy that's in place. There's a
Yeah.
potential contagions being able to spread around. So
Yeah.
then, that's like a sanctuary trauma. Breach of trust is, you could have done more to have had all this stuff in place, rather than just tiptoeing around it and not making things up as you go along.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because I think that was, for a few people, that was the biggest anger point, is they didn't feel sort of looked after or safe, or that the trust was broken at that point. And there was a real ripple of anger within individuals that I spoke to, and it all centered around that trust, that it had been broken, and it did drive a few of them to leave and sign off, but also then struggled on the outside initially. But yeah, it was interesting to see that happening while they were in as well, around that trust side of things.
Yeah, I guess they're breaching the psychological safety, aren't they? That psychological contract you have with that organisation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, I was working on a camp at that point as well, so I was seeing. I was a civilian, I was a contractor, but I was working on a camp at that point, and there was individuals there that I'd known for many, many years, who I said, they really did love the army, but at that point they were pretty broken, and just see they're just a little bit lost. They didn't know what to do with themselves, or how to even deal with it. There was just a real lack of trust, and a real anger and frustration at the system at the time. So yeah, it's interesting that you highlight that point, because I was seeing it very much real time at that point, which was very crazy. So in terms of sort of next year, new year, new opportunities. What things have you guys got planned that people can keep an eye out for and look for, and especially if they're thinking about it and they might want to sort of have a little nosy. What sort of things have you got coming up for 2026 with What Makes a Difference?
So I think we're kind of going back and looking at. So I suppose this is a bit of an invitation. We're wanting to run kind of a series of workshops almost to support that transition, looking at things like interview skills from a slightly different angle, where we're actually looking at the structures of conversations, where we're looking at delivering maybe a series of workshops that they can dip in and out of on things like integrating back into the family, integrating into your relationships, building kind of social connections. The nice thing is that all of those interlink, and the skills that you will gain from those are not limited to one situation.
Yeah.
They're applicable across the whole gamut of your life, because each of those is built around core understandings of what you need to be able to know to do well to build community, relationships, trusts, establish context, limit ambiguity, understand yourself, and communicate that with others in a positive way. So we've got that, and we've got quite a few projects that we're just kind of coming to fruition just now. So all going well.
Yeah.
That means there'll be quite a bit of support coming from different angles next year.
We've
This
also
sounds
got
exciting.
we've also got is with the Welsh Thrive Online network.
Mm.
So we've got a couple of online workshops for them as well. And as well, we've got one live up in North Wales as well. So that'll be early next year.
Yeah, March. So keep an
Yeah.
eye out for that.
I'm excited. I'm following you on Instagram, so if guys, I'm on
Post more.
Instagram.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I find a lot of the
Yeah.
guys that are in don't like to be on LinkedIn while they're in. So Instagram, you can stalk yourselves on Instagram to see what's going on. You also have a website, which I'll put on the description for this podcast.
Cool.
So yeah, I really sort of support people getting in touch with you guys, because it's such an important part of leaving, is that holistic. Everyone
Yeah.
is leaving in your family,
Yeah.
if you have a family, and if you're on your own, you're leaving, and you need that support network, and to have those conversations with people like yourself is just so important, and will really help that transition out of the military, and hopefully make it a safe, pleasant process, rather than an incredibly stressful spiral process that can become quite
Because
dangerous.
ideally, what we do, Katie, is group workshops. So if there's say half dozen to a dozen people, but they come to us individually, then we probably say, right, we'll get a cohort if they're comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And then we'd work with that group then. So then everybody shares an experience as well. And it's more beneficial to go, oh, actually, I really like that. What you're doing over there is a whole really good learning experience.
And so important for people to go through it together, because I think there is a really bad habit at the moment that people really go through it alone. And don't necessarily reach out, and it's just do that one workshop, and you'll have the confidence to then speak to people and continue on that journey, and not feel so alone in it all. It's the worst thing you can do to yourself. You're not giving yourself a fair chance. And everyone that's had success and dug themselves out of those situations are the ones that have actually reached out and said, I'm struggling, or I don't know what I'm doing, and that's the chance they've given themselves, and then it's turned around for them. But like you say, try and catch it before. Be honest with yourself from the beginning.
It's kind of like sorry, Ali, it's kind of like what you've been saying, isn't it? The military, they build that trust in, so you've got those boundaries, not only go around you, but they go around your uppos as well. And that's that built in
Yeah.
trust. So you think about look after other people before yourself. And that's why people sometimes find it really hard to reach out, because it's the other person needs more support than what I do, even though I'm really struggling and my life's gone to shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's important to note there are huge benefits to military mindset. The military mindset is a glorious thing in a lot of ways. It really is. And that means that comes with a whole set of values, expectations and follow through that businesses and communities out there are crying out for and don't know where and how to build. It exists already.
Yeah.
It's called the military mindset. The challenge is how you kind of re-establish the parts of that you need to make now unique to you, because you're not working in a team environment where everybody else has exactly the same and operates in the same way. So the adaptation that's needed to enable you to still have and be true to what you've learned to be in the way that you want to be,
Yeah.
because there is value there.
Yeah.
And there are employers out there who recognise it. And what Rich and I are looking to do as well is work with those to build the internal networks to support that, because these are all skills, attitudes that employers are crying out for in teams. But how do they blend it into their existing teams? I said at the start, I apologise for being HR. But one of the things I've always followed through on, no matter what level in the business I've been working at, I can train skill, I can't train attitude.
Yeah.
And that's what gives the military mindset the edge.
Yeah.
Is it has the skill, but it also has the attitude.
I love that. Just got the name for the podcast. Yeah. Absolutely. 1,000% agree. 1,000% agree and more. And it, just need to get the right sort of conversations going within business as well. And I'm so glad you're going that way, because it's a two-way street. We can push so far, but if business don't understand it still, then we're still going to struggle. And I think, businesses that have kind of taken on the military sort of group of people have seen the benefit, and then they recruit hard. They really recruit hard from that. But those jobs aren't for everyone. It needs to be a good spectrum of jobs, for people.
Yeah.
But we've got to get the businesses understanding the value as well.
And don't follow the herd either, because ages ago people get into data and fibre, then it's like close protection, maritime security, cyber security, and God knows what the next one will be. Make your own path as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would mirror that. Find what interests you. Spend some time understanding yourself and what really lights you up with joy. Because we spend a huge amount of time in a career and in a job, it might as well be something that makes us want to get out of bed in the morning for the right reasons.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. Thank you very much, Ali and Rich.
Thank you,
It's been
Katie.
absolutely brilliant. I
Thank you very
absolutely love what you're doing. And we're going to do a follow-up next year, because I want to see this exciting stuff that's going on next year. And like I say, I'm going to put your details in the description, so if people find it now or in a year's time, they can come and contact you and follow you on Instagram, because it's all on there. And you know what, you can have a little nosy and a little stalk before you leave, and you don't need to tell anyone.
Yeah.
You can have a little nosy.
Yeah, and we do have a Facebook page which kind of mirrors our LinkedIn page, so if people aren't on LinkedIn, they can kind of follow our Facebook as well.
Facebook as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I fully recommend people. This is a great step. If they email you, message you, that is a great first step to leaving, and will hopefully help people leave on better terms and better ways to come into the civilian world. But thank you, Ali and Rich, and I'll
Thank you.
next year.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.